My name is Sophie. I am 29 years old. I always believed in love. I thought marriage was forever, but I was wrong. I met Daniel 5 years ago. He worked in the same office as me. He was friendly and kind. Every morning, he brought me coffee. Every afternoon, he asked how I was feeling. I smiled a lot when I was with him. He was not rich. He didn't drive a big car, but he made me feel safe. He made me laugh. He said I was special. I started to love him. I thought he loved me too. One day he asked me out. I said yes. We went for a walk in the park. We talked for hours. I felt happy. It was simple, but it felt right. After a few months, he asked me to marry him. He said he didn't want to wait. He said life was short. I was surprised, but also excited. I said yes. We had a small wedding, just family and close friends. He looked at me with warm eyes and said, "You are my everything." I believed him. I believed every word. We moved into a small apartment. I loved our home. It was quiet and clean. We didn't have much money, but I didn't care. I thought love was enough. In the first year, Daniel was sweet. He helped with cooking. He made tea when I was tired. On weekends, we watched movies and ate together. He often told me he was lucky to have me, but slowly, things changed. He came home late. He said he had more work. He started to check his phone in another room. He took his calls outside. When I asked questions, he smiled and said, "Nothing is wrong." He didn't help much at home anymore. When I talked, he didn't listen. He seemed far away, even when he sat next to me. I felt lonely. I started to worry. I asked him again, "Is everything okay?" He said, "Yes, just tired." I wanted to believe him. I wanted things to go back to how they were. One day, I made his favorite dinner. I cleaned the whole house. I wore the dress he once said he liked. I waited for him with hope. But he didn't come home. He came back very late. He looked surprised to see the food. He didn't even say sorry. He said, "I forgot," and went to take a shower. I felt sad, but I didn't cry. I just cleaned the plates and went to bed. At night, I stayed awake. I stared at the wall. My mind was full of questions. I thought maybe I did something wrong. Maybe he didn't love me anymore. One morning, I saw something strange. His shirt had lipstick on the collar. It was not my color. I held it in my hand for a long time. Then I put it back. I didn't ask him that day. I was too scared. But after that, I watched more closely. I saw perfume on his jacket. He never wore perfume before. He started using new words. He even changed his haircut. I was not stupid. I knew something was wrong, but I was still too afraid to speak. I thought maybe it would stop. maybe he would change. Then, one Sunday, he said he needed to go to the office, but it was quiet outside. I called the office phone. No one answered. I waited. I sat in the kitchen for hours. He came back in the evening. He looked tired, but also happy. I looked at his eyes. He smiled, but it was not the same smile I knew. I said, "Where were you?" He said, "I told you. At work." I wanted to shout, but I didn't. I just looked at him and said, "I called your office." His face changed. Only for a second. Then he laughed and said, "I was in a meeting." I didn't believe him, but I didn't say more. I just went to the bedroom and closed the door. That night, I didn't sleep again. My mind was full of pain. I thought about our first days, the walks, the tea, the small jokes. I missed those days. I missed the man I married. The next day, I took a walk alone. I walked to the park where we had our first date. I sat on a bench and watched the people. I saw couples holding hands. I saw children playing. I felt like I was the only person there without love. I didn't want to tell anyone. I didn't want to tell my friends. I didn't want my parents to worry. I just wanted the truth. When I went back home, Daniel was watching TV. He smiled and asked, "How was your walk?" I looked at him and said, "I know you are hiding something." He looked surprised. Then he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You are not the same. You don't look at me like before. You lie about work. You smell different. I saw lipstick on your shirt." He didn't answer for a moment. Then he stood up and said, "I think you're tired. You think too much." He left the room. I sat there. My hands were cold. My eyes were dry. I didn't want to cry anymore. I wanted answers. That night, I waited until he fell asleep. Then I took his phone. I didn't want to do it, but I had to know. I looked at his messages. What I saw broke my heart. There were many messages from one woman. Her name was Rachel. She called him my love. She sent him photos. She asked him when he would see her again. He told her, "Soon, my wife does not know." I stared at those words again and again. My wife does not know. He lied to me every single day. He told me he loved me, but he was with someone else. I put the phone back. I sat on the floor. I covered my face, but I did not cry. I just sat there in silence. That night, I did not sleep. I watched the sky turn dark. I watched it turn light again. And I knew something had to change. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next morning, I made tea. I put 2 cups on the table. Daniel came into the kitchen. He said, Good morning. I did not smile. I looked at his face. He sat down and drank his tea. I asked, "Who is Rachel?" He looked at me. His face changed. He said, "Why are you asking?" I said, "I saw your phone." He was quiet. Then he said, "It was nothing." I said, "Please tell me the truth." He stood up. He said, "It is a small thing. I made a mistake." I asked, "Do you love her?" He did not speak. He looked at the floor. Then he said, "I don't know." I felt cold. I looked at my cup. My hands were still. I said, "You lied to me." He said, "I did not want to hurt you." I said, "But you did hurt me." Then he took his bag and left the house. I sat alone. I did not cry. I felt tired. I looked at the door. He was gone. The house was quiet. I cleaned the cups. Then I went to the bedroom. I sat on the bed. I looked at the window. I asked myself many questions. Why did he lie? When did he start? What did I do wrong? In the evening, he came home. He said, "Can we talk?" I said, "Talk about what?" He said, "I want to fix this." I looked at him. "You were happy with her," I said. "No," he said. "It was just talking." I looked at him. I said, "You sent her pictures. You called her my love. That is not just talking." He looked down. He said, "I know. I am sorry." That night, I slept in the other room. I closed the door. I did not want to see his face. I turned off the light. I looked at the wall. My heart felt heavy, but I stayed calm. In the morning, I left the house. I went to see my friend Emma. She opened the door. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "No. I need to talk." We sat in her kitchen. I told her everything. I said, "He has another woman. Her name is Rachel. I saw the messages." Emma was quiet. She gave me a cup of tea. She said, "You did not do anything wrong." I looked at my hands. They were shaking. I said, "I don't know what to do." Emma said, "Come stay here for a few days." I said, "Okay. Thank you." I went back home in the afternoon. Daniel was not there. I packed my clothes. I took my phone. I took my bag. I looked around the room. It was quiet. I put my house key on the table. Then I left. I stayed at Emma's house. I slept in her small room. It was warm and clean. She gave me food. She let me rest. She did not ask too many questions. I was thankful. Daniel sent many messages. He said, "Please talk to me." He said, "I am sorry." He said, "I miss you." But I did not reply. I was not ready. After 3 days, he called me. I did not answer. Then he sent one more message. It said, "I ended things with Rachel. Please come back." I read the message, but I did not believe it. I remembered his face when I asked him the truth. He did not say sorry right away. He did not stop until I saw the messages. He did not love me the way I loved him. One day, I went back to the apartment. Daniel was not home. I opened the door. I took more clothes. I took my books. I saw a photo of us on the wall. We looked happy in the photo, but it was not real. He was not honest. I put the photo in a drawer. I closed it. Then I left again. I did not cry. I did not wait. I walked slowly down the stairs. I walked outside. I took a deep breath. The air was cold, but I felt free. At night, I sat on Emma's couch. I drank warm tea. I looked at the sky from the window. I saw the stars. I felt sad, but also strong. I knew he would send more messages. I knew he would say more words, but I was not going back. The next morning, Daniel called again. He said, "Can we meet?" I said, "No. I need time." He said, "I will wait." I did not answer. Emma smiled at me. She said, "You are brave." I said, "No, I am just tired." She said, "You are still strong." I started to help around the house. I helped cook. I helped clean. I looked for a small place to stay. Emma said, "You can stay here more." I said, "Thank you, but I want my own room." I found a small flat near her house. It had one bed, one table, and a small kitchen. I moved in. It was quiet. I liked the quiet. I bought new sheets. I made tea every morning. I read simple books. I walked in the park. Daniel still tried to call. He left flowers at my door. He sent new messages. One message said, "I am not the same without you." But I said nothing. One day, he waited outside my new flat. I saw him from the window. He stood there with a box. He looked around. I closed the curtain. I turned off the light. After some time, he walked away. That night, I felt sad again, but I also felt safe. I made soup. I ate alone. I cleaned the kitchen. I went to bed early. My heart was quiet. I did not know what would happen next. I did not know if I would meet someone new. But I knew this: I did not want to live with lies. I did not want a husband who said "I love you" to me and someone else at the same time. I woke up early. I opened the window. The sun was out. The sky was clear. It was a new day. I made tea. I sat at the table. My phone was on the chair. I looked at it. There were new messages from Daniel. One message said, "I am sorry." Another one said, "Can I see you?" I put the phone down. I looked out the window again. I did not know what to say. I did not want to see him, but I wanted to hear the truth from him. I wanted to ask him why he hurt me. I picked up the phone. I sent one short message. It said, "We can meet at the park. One time only." He replied fast. "Thank you," he wrote. That afternoon, I put on my coat. I walked to the park. The wind was cold. The trees moved slowly. I saw Daniel waiting near a bench. He saw me and stood up. I walked to the bench. We both sat down. I did not smile. He did not smile. He said, "Thank you for coming." I said nothing. I looked at the ground. He said, "I know I did wrong." I stayed quiet. He looked at me and said, "I lied to you. I broke your trust. I am sorry." I said, "Why did you do it?" He looked down. He did not answer fast. Then he said, "I was not happy. I felt lost. I met someone new. I made a mistake." I said, "You had a wife. You had a home. Why didn't you speak to me?" He said, "I didn't want to hurt you, but I hurt you anyway. I know that." I looked at him. I said, "You looked at me every day. You said I love you. But you also said it to her." He said, "I ended it. I told her goodbye. I want you back." I shook my head. I said, "You should have thought about that before." He said, "Please give me one more chance." I said, "No. I gave you many chances. You lied every time." He looked sad. He said, "I still love you." I stood up. I looked at him one last time. I said, "Goodbye, Daniel." Then I walked away. He did not follow me. I walked home slowly. I looked at the people in the street. Some were laughing. Some were quiet. I felt calm. When I got home, I made tea. I sat on the floor and drank slowly. I looked at the wall. I felt quiet inside. The next morning, I cleaned my small flat. I washed the clothes. I swept the floor. I made toast and eggs. I opened the window. The air was fresh. I sat by the window. I listened to the birds. That week, I started walking more. I walked to the market. I walked to the park. I walked to the small lake nearby. One day, I saw a woman sitting on a bench. She looked my age. She smiled at me. I smiled back. Her name was Helen. She had a small dog. The dog jumped at me. I laughed. She said, He likes you. We talked for a few minutes. She lived on my street. She was kind. She said, "I like your smile." We met again the next day. We walked in the park. We talked about food and music. We talked about simple things. I did not talk about Daniel. I was not ready. But I felt better with Helen. She was kind and funny. Some days she brought her dog. Some days she brought apples. I brought tea in a bottle. We sat on a bench and drank. My flat was small, but it was enough. I had a table, a chair, a bed, and a small kitchen. It was quiet. It was clean. It was mine. At night, I cooked dinner. I listened to soft music. I read simple books. I slept early. One evening, Daniel came to my door. I did not open it. I watched him from the window. He stood there for 5 minutes. Then he left. He sent one more message. It said, "Please forgive me." I did not reply. I put my phone in a drawer. I did not want to look at it. Days passed. I saw Helen again. She gave me flowers. She said, "You look happy today." I said, "I feel okay now." We walked around the lake. We talked about holidays and seasons. We talked about her dog. She asked, "Are you married?" I said, "I was. Not now." She looked at me. She said, "I'm sorry." I said, "It's okay." The next day, I bought a plant. I put it near the window. I watered it every morning. It made my room look nice. I started writing new words in a notebook. I wanted to learn new things. I wanted to keep my mind strong. I made a new routine. Wake up early, eat well, clean the house, take a walk, smile when I can. I saw children play outside. I saw old people sit on benches. I saw dogs run on the grass. I felt quiet and safe. One morning, I walked past my old street. I saw the building where I lived with Daniel. I stopped and looked at it, just for a minute. Then I walked away. I did not cry. I did not feel angry. I just felt done. That life was over. My new life had started. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. More emotional and inspiring stories are coming soon. My name is Evelyn. I am 62 years old. I live in a small town in the north of England. I live with my husband, Peter. We live in a very small house. Life was never easy for us. We worked all our lives, but money was never enough. When I was young, many people told me not to marry Peter. They said he had no money and no future. My parents begged me to think again. My friends told me I was making a mistake. But I loved him. I believed love was enough. I thought we could build a good life together. People said I was wrong, but I still chose Peter. If you want to walk with me through this life, please stay close, subscribe, Tell me your country in comments and share my story. Our wedding was simple. There were no lights, no music, and no gold. There were no gifts, only our hands together. Peter looked at me and said, I will work every day for you. I will never leave you. We will build a life. Those words gave me hope. But life was harder than our dreams. Peter worked in the fields. He lifted heavy things. He worked long hours in the sun and in the rain. His hands grew rough. His back often hurt. Still, the money was never enough. I also worked. I washed clothes for people. I cleaned houses. Sometimes I cooked for families. We worked together every day, but our house stayed poor. We had 2 children, 1 daughter and 1 son. I loved them more than anything. I wanted to give them a better life. I wanted them to go to school and have dreams. But it was not easy. Every coin we earned went to food and rent. Many days I gave my share of food to the children and told them I was not hungry. But I was hungry. I just wanted them to eat. Our daughter grew into a young woman. She wanted to marry one day. She wanted a family of her own. But no man came to ask for her hand. People whispered behind our backs. They said, "She is from a poor home. No one will marry her." Each time I heard these words, my heart broke. I wanted to protect her, but I could not. I told her, "You are kind and good. Do not listen to them." She smiled at me, but I knew she felt pain. Our son Leo was younger. He watched everything. He saw his father come home with tired feet. He saw me rub my hands after long work. He saw me cry quietly at night when I thought no one was listening. He never spoke much, but he carried my pain in his heart. One evening, I sat in the small room. I looked at the old clothes of my children. I touched the torn fabric and I cried. I thought, if only I could give them more. If only I could change their fate. At that moment, Leo came into the room. He saw my tears and took my hand. He said, "Mother, don't cry. One day I will give you everything you dreamed of." I looked at him. He was only a boy, but his words were strong. My heart shook with both hope and fear. I smiled weakly and kissed his head. A few minutes later, Peter came in. He saw us together. He placed his hand on Leo's shoulder and said, "Son, life is not easy. But if you stay strong, you can change our story." That night I lay in bed and could not sleep. I thought about Leo's words. I thought about Peter's tired hands. I thought about our daughter's sad eyes. I prayed quietly in the dark. I prayed not for myself, but for my children. I said, I could not give them gold. I could not give them a big house, but maybe they will give me peace before I close my eyes. Days passed and life stayed the same. Peter worked in the fields. I washed clothes and cleaned houses. Neighbors sometimes laughed at us. They said, "Look at that family. They have nothing." Their words were sharp. I tried to ignore them, but my heart trembled. I held my children and told them, "Do not be afraid. One day life will be better." But in my own heart, I felt weak. One afternoon I sat with Peter. My voice was low. I said, "We gave everything, but still people laugh at us. I feel like a failure." Peter held my hand and said, "You are not a failure. You are the strongest woman I know. Without you, this family would not survive." His words gave me comfort, but I still felt broken inside. I asked him, "Will our children ever forgive us for giving them this life?" He had no answer. He only pulled me close and held me in silence. The struggle became worse when money ran short. Some days we had only bread and tea for dinner. I gave my share to the children and told them I already ate, but I had not eaten. Leo looked at me once and asked, "Mother, why don't you eat?" I forced a smile and said, "Do not worry, my son." He said nothing, but I knew he saw the truth. Leo grew more serious with time. He walked quietly through the house. He listened more than he spoke. When neighbors made fun of us, I often came home with tears. Leo always saw my red eyes. One evening he asked me, "Mother, why do you cry?" I shook my head and said, "Nothing, son. I am only tired." But he knew. He clenched his fists and whispered, "I will change this. I swear I will." I wanted to stop him. I wanted to tell him not to carry such heavy thoughts. But I could not. I saw fire in his young eyes. He was no longer just a boy. He was already carrying the weight of our pain. The years did not make things easier. As Peter and I grew older, our strength began to fade. My hands sometimes shook when I carried water. Peter could not stand straight after long work. Still, we kept going. Our love kept us alive, but love did not give us respect. We stayed poor. One evening I sat with Leo. My voice was soft. I said, "Son, you are our only hope now. Your sister needs a good life. You must study. You must make something of yourself." Leo looked at me and said, "Mother, I will not only make something of myself, I will give you the life you deserve." I touched his face and whispered, "Do not promise too much, my son." He looked back at me and said, "Life is cruel." Then I will be stronger than life. That night I felt both afraid and proud. Afraid because I knew the world was heavy. Proud because I saw courage in my son's eyes. I closed my eyes and prayed again. I prayed that his promise would not break him. I prayed that one day my son would stand tall. I prayed that one day I would see him give me peace before I left this world. Leo grew older, but he never forgot his words. He wanted to give me peace. He wanted to give our family respect. From a young age, he started to look for work. He did not care if the job was small. He only wanted to help. At first, he carried water for people. He walked in the hot sun and in the cold wind. People gave him a few coins. He came home tired but smiling. He put the coins in my hand and said, "Mother, this is for you." I cried quietly and told him, "You should not suffer like this." But Leo said, "Your pain is greater than mine. Let me carry it now." Soon he found another job. He cleaned tables in a small cafe. He wiped dishes, washed floors, and worked from morning until night. The owner shouted at him many times, but Leo stayed quiet. His hands were red from soap. I touched them one night and whispered, "My son, you are burning yourself for me." He answered, "For you, I will burn and rise again." Weeks passed. Leo worked wherever he could. He carried heavy bags in the market. He delivered food to houses. He sold newspapers on the street. Many times he came home sick. Many times he wanted to give up. But each time he looked at me, he remembered his promise. He whispered to himself, "Her tears are my fuel. I cannot stop." At night, Leo did not rest. He borrowed old books from a friend. He sat in the corner of our small house and read for hours. The light was dim, but he kept reading. He wanted to learn about money. He wanted to learn about business. He wanted to know how the world worked. I often woke up in the night and saw him sitting there. I asked, "Why don't you sleep, my son?" He smiled at me and said, "Mother, I will sleep after I win." My heart was heavy with both pride and fear. Peter watched him too. One evening, Peter said, "Son, I worked like this all my life, but the world crushed me. Are you sure you can fight it?" Leo looked at his father with strong eyes and said, "Father, you fought alone. I fight with mother's tears in my heart. That will make me stronger." Peter sighed and said, "Then go, my son. May you succeed where I failed." After some months, Leo saved a little money. He decided to try something new. He bought a few small items and sold them in the street. He stood outside in the cold and called to people. Some ignored him. Some mocked him. Some bought from him. When he came home with a small profit, he placed it in front of me. I looked at the money and whispered, "My son, you are planting seeds of hope." He answered, "Mother, one day these seeds will grow into trees of respect for you." Days turned into months. Leo worked harder and harder. His friends asked him to relax, to spend time with them. But Leo shook his head and said, "My youth belongs to my mother. She gave me life. Now I will give her peace." They laughed at him, but he did not care. Sometimes he failed. Once, some men cheated him in a deal. He came home with empty pockets. His face was full of pain. I asked him, "What happened, my son?" He clenched his fists and said, "They fooled me, mother. They stole from me. But I will not stop. They can take my money, but they cannot take my fire." I hugged him and said, "Your fire will light the world one day." Leo kept learning. He saved every coin he could. Soon, he had enough to open a very small shop. It was just a corner where he sold small goods. Still, it was his own. He stood there from morning to night. Some days were good. Some days no one came. But Leo never closed early. He told himself, "If I quit, I break my promise. I cannot break it." One evening I visited his shop. I saw my son standing proudly behind the counter. My eyes filled with tears. "My son," I said softly, "you are turning nothing into something. You are building with your own hands." Leo smiled and said, "Mother, one day this shop will become a door to your peace." I touched his face and whispered, "I believe you, Leo." But the road was not easy. Some bigger shopkeepers grew jealous. They spread lies about him. They told people his goods were bad. Some tried to cheat him again. Leo lost money more than once. He came home tired and angry. Still, he whispered, "I will not give up. My mother's tears are my strength." Months passed and his shop began to grow. He learned how to deal with people. He learned to say no when someone tried to cheat him. He learned to save instead of spending. Slowly, he opened another small shop on a different street. Then another. His name began to spread in town. People said, "That young man works hard. He is honest. He will go far." For the first time, I felt a change. Neighbors who once mocked me now greeted me with respect. Some even said, "You raised a fine son." I smiled, but inside I thought, it is not me. It is his own courage. The change also touched our daughter. Proposals that never came before now slowly started to arrive. One evening she whispered to me, "Mother, maybe now someone will want me." I kissed her forehead and said, "Of course, my child. Your worth was always high. People were blind, but now they see." Leo worked harder than ever. He supported his sister's marriage. The wedding was not rich, but it was full of joy. I cried as I placed her hand into her husband's. I whispered, "Go, my child. Live with respect. Your brother gave you this gift." My daughter hugged Leo and said, "Brother, you saved my life." That night I sat with Peter. I said softly, "Do you see, Peter? Our daughter is married. Our son is rising. Maybe our story is changing." Peter smiled and answered, "It is changing because of him." I looked at Leo and thought, his promise is carrying us all. Still, Leo did not rest. He whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning. I will not stop until my mother never cries again." He carried his vow like a flame that refused to die. From dust, my son was rising, not only in money, but also in respect and in honor. Leo's shop grew more with time. People began to trust him. They said, "He is fair. He is strong. He will go far." His name spread not only in our street, but also in the town. I walked outside and people no longer laughed at me. Some of them lowered their eyes. Some even smiled and said, "You are lucky. Your son is a good man." For the first time in many years, I felt light in my heart. Leo did not change. He did not grow proud. He still remembered my tears. Each time he came home, he sat beside me and asked, "Mother, are you happy now?" I always smiled, but I knew he was still not done. He carried a fire inside him. He wanted more for me, for our family. Soon, Leo opened another shop, then another. He worked day and night. He learned how to deal with people. He learned how to save money. He grew stronger with each year. People in the town began to speak his name with respect. They said, "That boy had nothing, but look at him now." He has built everything with his own hands. Our daughter was now married and happy in her new home. She came to visit me often. She held my hand and said, "Mother, you always told me to wait. Now I understand. My brother gave me a good life, and you gave me courage." I kissed her and said, "No, my child. You gave me strength. Without you, I would have fallen." One evening, Leo sat with me. His voice was soft, but strong. He said, "Mother, I promised you peace. I will not stop until you walk with respect. One day the people who laughed at you will bow their heads." His words made me cry. I told him, "My son, you already gave me peace. You gave me more than I asked." But he shook his head. "It is not enough. You will see, mother. One day you will walk like a queen." Years passed. Leo grew into a man. He was no longer the boy who carried water or sold newspapers. He was a man who owned many shops. He helped others find work. People came to him for advice. Neighbors who once mocked us now came to our door with gifts. They said, "Forgive us. We were wrong. Your son is greater than gold." I smiled softly. I did not answer with anger. I only said, "Respect belongs to those who work hard and carry love." Inside, I felt peace. My heart was full. Leo also found love. He met a kind young woman named Emily. She was gentle and brave. She believed in him. She told him, "I do not care about wealth. I care about your heart." He told me about her one night. He lowered his head and said, "Mother, her name is Emily. She gives me peace." I held his hand and whispered, "If she gives you peace, then she is a blessing." Emily came to our home many times. She spoke to me with respect. She cared for me as if I was her own mother. I prayed quietly in my heart. I prayed that she would stay by his side. I prayed that my son would know love not only from me, but also from her. One evening, Leo said to me, "Mother, I want to marry Emily. But I do not want the wedding to be simple. I want it to be the day you walk with pride. I want the world to see that you are my honor." Tears filled my eyes. I whispered, "My son, you already gave me honor. But if this is your dream, I will wait for it." Months later, the wedding day came. The hall was full of people. There were lights, flowers, and music. People came from near and far. Some came with respect, some came with curiosity, and some came because they wanted to see how far we had come. When I entered the hall, I felt the eyes of everyone on me. Some of them were the same neighbors who once mocked me. Now they looked down. They could not meet my eyes. I wore a simple dress, but I walked slowly and with peace in my heart. My husband Peter walked beside me. His back was bent with age, but his eyes were full of pride. Leo came to me in front of everyone. He held my hand and said, "Mother, today is not only my wedding. Today is your victory. You gave me life, and I give you respect. No one can laugh at you again." My tears fell. I hugged him and whispered, "My son, you kept your promise. You gave me peace before my last breath." The wedding was full of joy. Leo and Emily held hands. People cheered. Music filled the air. Some of the guests came to me and said, "Forgive us. We were blind before. You are blessed with a son greater than gold." I only smiled. I did not want revenge. I only wanted peace, and now I had it. After the wedding, life moved forward. Leo's work grew more. His shops turned into a company. People from other towns came to know his name. They said, "He is honest. He is strong. He is different from the rest." But whenever someone praised him, Leo said, "The honor belongs to my mother. She is the reason I stand." Emily also became a blessing. She cared for me every day. She said, "Mother, I cannot take your place, but I will carry your love forward." I hugged her and said, "You already gave me more than I asked. You gave my son peace, and that gave me life." Soon, I held my first grandchild in my arms. The child was small and soft. I cried as I looked at the baby. I whispered, "You come from tears, but you will live in honor. Your father fought for me, and now you will carry his strength." My daughters also came often with their families. They hugged me and said, "Mother, you always told us to wait for our time." You were right. Our brother gave us respect, and you gave us patience. Years passed, and my hair turned white. My hands grew weak, but my heart was full. One night I called Leo to sit beside me. I held his hand and said, "My son, you gave me more than I asked. I prayed only for small peace, but you gave me a river of respect. How did you carry so much weight on your shoulders?" Leo kissed my hand and answered, "Mother, your tears gave me strength. Every insult I heard gave me fire. I could not rest until you were free." I cried softly. I whispered, "Then you are not only my son, you are my victory." Peter sat beside us. His eyes were wet. He said, "I once thought I failed as a man, but you, Leo, proved me wrong. You showed me that love can create greatness even from nothing." Leo hugged his father and said, "You did not fail, Father. You planted the seed. I only watered it. As the years went by, my body grew weaker, but I had no fear. I had lived long enough to see my son keep his promise. I often told Emily, "When I go, do not cry too much. Celebrate instead, for I did not leave this world in shame. I left in peace." On my final birthday, my family gathered around me. Leo stood with Emily and their children. My daughter and her family filled the room with laughter. I looked at them all and said, "This is my treasure. Not gold, not silver, but faces full of love." That night I called Leo once again. My voice was weak, but steady. "My son, do you remember the day you promised me peace?" His eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "Yes, Mother." I remember every word. I smiled faintly. You kept it. You gave me more than peace. You gave me a life worth remembering. I closed my eyes slowly. I left the world not in sorrow, but in peace. My last whisper was, "Love never fails." My family cried, but their tears were not shame. They were tears of love. They knew our story was not one of poverty. It was the story of a mother's sacrifice and a son's promise,